Welcome to Permission to Shift, the show that helps you transform fear, release limits, and get into a life you're excited to live. Today's guest is Tom Corley, author, speaker, frequent media contributor, and founder of The Rich Habits. He's also an avid runner, a weightlifter, a tennis player, a CPA, CFP, has a master's degree in taxation, and runs a financial services firm in New Jersey, USA. Since 2004, Tom has been studying the daily habits of the rich and poor. Author of Rich Habits and several other best-selling, award-winning books, Tom's study and research has reached well over 100 million people in 27 countries around the world. The consolidated study findings, called the Rich Habits Research Summary, provides a listing of over 300 behaviors, thinking, and activities that separate the rich and the poor. He now travels the world speaking to thousands at a time and has been featured on Business Insider, CNBC, CBS Evening News, Fox News, The Dave Ramsey Radio Show, CNN, MSN, USA Today, and many others. I am very pleased to be welcoming Tom to the show today. Welcome to the show, Tom. I am so excited to have you here.
Hi, Anna. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I enjoy talking about my research and trying to help people, transform their lives.
Mm-hmm. And your research, this is a big episode because you are working specifically with the number one question, the number one thing people say they have to change. They want to change their money.
Mm-hmm. Well, so we all have habits, right? And we have exercise habits, we have eating habits, we have relationship building habits, relationship maintenance habits, we have money habits. And, I found in my research, which is really pretty cool, I know it's unique. There's nothing like it. It's the 4 paths to wealth. There's 4 paths to wealth. And one of the paths I even wrote a book on called Effortless Wealth is the name of the book, but it was on the Saver Investor path. The Saver Investor path is the easiest path to become a millionaire because it doesn't require any unique set of skills. It doesn't require PhDs, graduate degrees, doesn't even require a college education. All it requires is 2 things really: that you have a middle-class income, and you save 20% or more of that income. And you can't. The Saver Investor path really isn't an option for poor people. It might be an option for people in the lower middle class, but certainly not poor people because they're living paycheck to paycheck. But if you're in the middle class, you have, to some extent, the ability to control your standard of living. It's up to you in many cases, where you live, the kind of house you live in. And so if you can find a standard of living that allows you to save 20% or more of your net income, according to my research, it took 32 years for the Saver investors to accumulate an average of about $3.3 million. So it's consistently saving and then consistently deploying that savings in the form of prudent investments. So, and many of the investments that they had put their money into, their savings into, were the ones that we all know about: stocks, mutual funds, bonds, annuities, but also real estate investment, mostly rental properties. Some were rental, seasonal rentals. Some were rentals that were, had leases, things like that. But they seem to all deploy their savings that, consistently in those different categories.
And and for the audience here, this is a really big thing. You actually know what poverty feels like. Your family went through quite the swing. Can we take a step back and walk the audience through that journey so they really know, you've been there?
So it was, I was just 9 years old. I was in the 3rd grade, and we were very wealthy. My dad had a tool distribution business. He had a partner who was 39 years old. My dad was probably in his 40s at that time. And my dad was really the brains behind the operation. His partner was the sales team.
Mhm.
He ran the whole sales force, and they owned the entire Northeast. Uh, they had Sears, they had J.C. Penney's, they had all the major uh, tool retailers
Mhm.
on the East Coast. And so we were very wealthy. But then my dad's partner had a heart attack, and died. So my dad ended up selling the business. He got about $4.5 million for it, which is equivalent of like 21 million in today's dollars. And it was to be paid over 3 installments. He got the first installment, but he didn't get the other two. And the terms of the agreement stated that if even one installment was missed, the business reverted back to my father. Well, my father was too smart for his own good, and he took the business back 18 months later. What he took back was a completely different business. And within 30 days of taking the completely different business back, the warehouse was set on fire. It was arson. And we know who did it, but we couldn't prove it. And my dad spent probably a year and a half trying to prove it. But one of the things that the new owners did was they changed the insurance that my dad had used for many, many years to one that was not entirely ethical, and probably they probably paid a small premium for insuring the inventory. That was why they made the switch. My dad, I'm sure, had the best insurance policy for his inventory because he carried about $2.5 million worth of inventory.
Oh.
Well, what happened when he took the business back and the warehouse was burned to the ground, he went back to his vendors, many of them the manufacturers of the tools he had known for many years. They had been at our weddings, they had been at births, christenings, they had been at family events. They were part of our family for many years. And so when my dad called them up, and they said, well, Bill, we can't give you any more inventory because you still owe us for the inventory. Your company still owes us for the inventory that you had that got burned. So what my dad should have done, and we talked about it, before he passed away, we talked about it at length, is he should have just walked away from the whole thing, and filed for bankruptcy, and that would have been it. But that wasn't my dad. In his mind, these manufacturers, that he owed $200,000 to $150,000 to $300,000 to, if he filed for bankruptcy, they would have gone bankrupt. And so he ended up reaching into his bank account and paid them what he owed them, and then suspended the business, and then spent the next year and a half litigating with the insurance company, which fought him until he ran out of money. They basically, he was at the Brooklyn court, and the judge was a friend of his, because my dad was a powerful political leader in New York. And the judge said, Bill, you have to keep fighting. You'll win this case, but you have to keep fighting. And he said, I have no more money. And so the insurance company, they had to settle on, pittance. And anyway, we were essentially out of money. So the main thing was keeping the house, because there were 11 of us in the family, right? And we're all young kids. And so he ended up falling back on his accounting degree. He had, he was one of the heroes from World War II, and he went to night school, Seton Hall, got his accounting degree on the GI Bill, and he was very successful in everything he did. But this pulled the rug out from underneath him, and he could never really fully recover from it. Although when he did retire, he was a multimillionaire. But not to the extent that he was before, So it was something. I had to work as a janitor in order to go to college. I had fortunately got a job working for the New York City union for janitors in one of the high schools, Curtis High School on Staten Island. and that I made enough money that I was able to afford college. So I went full time to college and went 20 hours a week working as a janitor. They worked around my schedule. It was really nice of them to do that because I was a hard worker and they knew it. And I was young and they wanted to give me a helping hand. And you know, I guess, you know, when I graduated college, we were still poor at that point. But my father was recovering. And, you know, it was just one of those things you go through in life. I was rich and I was poor. And I can tell you, Anna, being rich is so much better, so much better. It eliminates, I did some research on this. Being wealthy eliminates 56% of the problems that ordinary people face. So you have 100% of problems. Now you only have 44% of the problems that everybody else has. You have problems like deaths in the family, weather. You have issues with family members. Everybody has common problems that don't go away no matter if you're rich or poor. But when your boiler goes and you're rich, the only problem you have is you know, how quickly can the repair person come to fix the boiler? If you need a new roof, how quickly can you get the new roof repaired? For everybody else, it's a different situation. It's a major problem. You got to find the money first before you can do those things, right? So yeah, so I've been on sort of a quest since 2004 to understand why some people are rich, some people are poor, and what they do that makes them rich and makes them poor. And I did a 5-year study on the daily habits of 233 wealthy people, 128 poor people. I asked them 144 questions each. They didn't know they were involved in a study, which was critical because the minute you tell a rich person that they're in a study and we want to know how you got rich, their ego gets in the way, so you don't get the truth. You get what they think you want to hear from them. So I had to do this very covertly because I wanted the truth. I wasn't thinking about what I was going to do with this data. I was just in search of the truth, and I knew that the only way to get there was get honest answers from everybody, and they had to be qualitative, meaning you know, there had to be Q&A, there had to be personal contact. I had to suck them in to get their story, and it had to be qualitative. I needed to document their answers and be able to transform it in a magical way into data, which I was able to do. And when I was done, I had this thing I called the research summary, and I realized, my gosh, the things that separate, for the most part, like the 80% of the data related to habits, something as simple as habits. And I knew nothing about habits.
Oh, really?
I didn't know even what a habit was, you know, so I ended up falling into several rabbit holes. I had to become a habit expert. So that meant I had to do a lot of reading, a lot of research to understand what habits were, how they work. That led me into another rabbit hole, which is neuroplasticity, the study of the brain, understanding neuroscience. I must have read about 50 books on that. And you know, it's interesting because habits are created by the brain. They're created for a reason. The habits make the brain more efficient. They conserve fuel, precious glucose that the brain relies on for the most part. It also relies on ketones, but glucose is the primary fuel. It converts it to ATP, which is the fuel every cell in the body uses. So I had to find out, you know, how the brain actually physically created habits, and that required the study of the brain, understanding the limbic system, which is where the basal ganglia resides, which is the master controller of habits in the brain. I had to understand how it was interconnected to every part of the brain, including the prefrontal cortex, which gives it authority to engage in a habit. It's interesting when most habits are subconscious, and you engage in them without the prefrontal cortex being involved at all. But when you want to stop engaging in a habit, or you want to create a new habit, the prefrontal cortex becomes the CEO of that whole creation of the infrastructure. It monitors the neurons that are talking to each other that might be a habit, and it gives the basal ganglia permission to send up a dendrite to investigate what's going on. And if the prefrontal cortex and the basal ganglia decide that this is in fact a habit, the prefrontal cortex gives the basal ganglia authority to mark it as a habit, which means a permanent dendrite is embedded inside the mass of neurons that make up the habit, and it stays a habit for the rest of your life. This is why you can, like I just did, get on a bike after 40 years of not being on a bike and be able to ride a bike, because the basal ganglia already has the infrastructure in place. It's not going away. So it's an interesting journey I've been on. And I've gotten a lot of press, a lot of publicity, and my books have sold a lot of books all over the world. I'm selling tons of books right now in China, Vietnam. I'm like a celebrity in Vietnam. I've been to Vietnam. I've done speaking engagements there, Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh, and I've been to Australia a number of times thanks to my books and my research. I've been all over the world and sharing my information. People are thirsty for this because
they need it.
There's a reason why you're rich, and there's a reason why you're poor, but nobody knows why. Well, I do, and I'm sharing that information, and people want it. They're desperate for it.
And I don't think they realize your research has some absolutely incredible statistics about being rich that have nothing to do with money. And I would love for you to talk on some of those ones, because they're huge.
So like I don't know what your perception of wealthy people is, but mine was, because I had a negative perspective on wealthy people, having grown up mostly poor. I just thought wealthy people were fat, gluttonous, cigar smoking, selfish people. That's what I was taught by my mother, unintentionally. She didn't mean to, but she was under stress, and she despised wealthy people. She just hated them, and I grew up hating them. And then I found out that wealthy people were in fact the superior humans on earth. They were the ones that were funding hospitals. They were funding nonprofits. They were devoting their time to these nonprofits. They were mentoring people. They were helping so many individuals become successful by sharing their experience and their knowledge. They were the best of the best. I'm not talking about the billionaires, the 0.1%, who a lot of people look at as being evil and part of the deep state and want to control our lives. There may be some truth to that. I'm talking about the average, everyday, ordinary multimillionaire, the 80%. The bell curve is in the case of millionaires, it's 95% bell curve. You've got 95% of the millionaires have somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 to $4 million, and that's it. And those are the millionaires that I'm trying to help people become. In my study, the range was from 3.2 million up to, I think, about 26 million.
Okay.
40 million. I remember somebody who had $40 million in net worth. But for the most part, even within that statistical variance, 95% fell into that 3.2 to $4.5 million range in my study. The ones that were by far the wealthiest were the entrepreneurs. They had, they were the quickest path to wealth. I mentioned that there were 4 paths to wealth.
Yep.
Saver investor path, the big company climber path, the virtuoso path. These are experts in their industry. And then there's the entrepreneur path. Well, the saver investor path took about 32 years to accumulate 3.3 million on average. The big company climber path, they accumulated, I believe they accumulated 4.1 million over a 20-year period. The virtuosos was 21 years. They accumulated a little less than 4 million. And the entrepreneurs accumulated an average of 7.4 million over 12 years. So, you know, if you're gung-ho on becoming uber wealthy, you know, obviously you want to be on the entrepreneur path.
Sweet.
But interestingly, each path has a certain personality requirements. You have to have a certain personality profile to be a saver investor. You have to have discipline. You have to sort of what I call a Home Depot investor. You have to do your homework. You have to manage your spending. You have to be frugal with your money. So you have to have that personality profile that you can do those things. Conversely, the flip side of that is the entrepreneur who's completely high risk tolerance. Saver investors have a low risk tolerance. Entrepreneurs are outgoing, they're gregarious, they're relationship builders. Saver investors, conversely, are mainly people that just want to work 9 to 5. They want to have their friends and their family and spend time with them. Entrepreneurs willing to work 70, 80 hours a week and not see his family and his friends. So there's all different types of personality traits that are associated with each path. And I've written about it on my website. You could go there if you want and take a look at it. There's I think Business Insider has even written a couple of articles, maybe CNBC, one of them. You know, you can't just sit there and say, well, I want to be an entrepreneur. It doesn't work that way. You have to, we're actually working on a test that you would take. It's probably going to be about 30 questions, and it will give you a grading in terms of the percentage of likelihood that of what path you should be on based on your personality profile. Yeah, so it's pretty interesting stuff. I'm working on that next week, creating the questions. I already know what some of them are, but it's going to be interesting. And I've got three groups right now that are trying to create some type of gamification using the testing and the 4 paths to wealth. So it's part of what I call my Wealth Academy, which is an online course I've created that I'm going to roll out soon. It's, you know, focuses on the 4 paths to wealth, and it's going to basically teach you everything you need to know in order to be wealthy for each particular path.
And will it also include your 10 habit tenets in there?
Yeah, so each particular path has certain requirements. Entrepreneur, big company climber, they have a lot of hours that you have to work. You have to spend time away from family. So these are requirements. They have certain personality traits that you have to meet. And they have certain specific rich habits that are associated with each path. So I actually, in my Wealth Academy, I go through each one of those 3 variables in detail, which makes the course really powerful, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. When you get that, we'll make sure we drop that down underneath the video. We'll make sure that because based on when we publish this particular segment. So anyone who's watching out there, keep your eyes open, put a link to this page, make sure you stay attached to this so that you know when that drops. That's going to be a pretty incredible opportunity for you. And while we're talking about the things that you need to embrace in order to fit into whatever category, there are some things that are overriding across all of the categories. And I know nobody likes the health conversation, but I know you have some pretty serious stats on this, poor versus wealthy around health. Can you share some of those?
Yeah, so in my research, I was kind of astonished. This is one of the things that started altering my my limiting belief about wealthy people, that for the most part, they were very health conscious. 80% of the wealthy in my study exercise aerobically 4 days a week, 30 minutes or more each day. They ate healthy. They ate healthy food. They weren't obese, and they didn't smoke cigars. They were riding bikes. They were jogging. They were in the gym on a treadmill or a Stairmaster. They were playing tennis. They were playing sports that involved aerobics. They were doing things almost every day that helped improve their health. And the interesting thing, which dovetails into the brain, is the fact that they were stumbled into this rich habit. I believe they did stumble into it. I don't think they were cognizant of how important aerobic activity was to brain health. Interestingly, aerobic activity increases the consumption of oxygen, and oxygen flows into the brain, and oxygen is used as a catalyst to convert glucose to ATP. Well, guess what? The more oxygen you have flowing into your brain cells, the more glucose you can convert into ATP, the more brain fuel you'll have. That means your brain cells are healthier and they're operating optimally. It also, if you do aerobic exercise combined with these high impact training, weightlifting, things like that, it creates something, produces a protein called BDNF, which helps to the axon, the myelin sheath. Every brain cell has an axon, one axon with multiple branches, and it has like a tree of dendrites. Well, the axons are what sends the signals that starts the whole communication process inside the brain. Well, when you have a thick myelin sheath around your axon, the firing happens quicker. One of the interesting studies that was done was on Einstein's brain, and what they said is his brain was just like everybody else's, except his axons were a little bit thicker. Well, that was because he had a thicker myelin sheath. He did a lot of walking. From what I've read, he did 1.5 to 2 hours of walking every day. That increased the oxygen flow into his brain, increased the girth of his axons, and thanks to the myelin sheath, and his brain cells were firing faster than yours or mine.
Wow.
Or people who don't exercise. So aerobic exercise actually increases your IQ over the years. And this is why, many of the entrepreneurs in particular, and to some extent the big company climbers, they might have started out as C students, but they finished off as geniuses, almost borderline geniuses, because their brains had evolved in such a way that they were superior to the average brain, thanks to their exercise habits and their eating habits.
And let's talk about this, because I know we're getting short on time here, but this is really huge. What you're saying is that our limiting beliefs about how smart we are can actually be overcome. And when we're talking about brain stuff, and I wrote it down here because it was so inspiring to me in your books, you talk about the absolute control that the wealthy keep over their internal stories, the gossip stories, the words they use to describe situations. They are tight reined on that. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so almost 100%, particularly the entrepreneurs and the big company climbers, were unbridled optimists. They had a really hardcore positive mental outlook on life. They looked at everything and they saw solutions. They didn't look at everything and see problems. If a problem crept up, they were solution oriented, and that was, it's primarily because of their positive mental outlook. There was a study that was done on this called the Broaden and Build study by B.L. Fredrickson. She called it Broaden and Build because when you have a positive mental outlook, it broadens your focus. When you have a negative outlook, it collapses your focus. So you're focusing only on the problem, the thing that's creating a problem in your life. It's basically, if you want to really look at it 10,000 feet in the air, the fight or flight syndrome that's hardwired into our brainstem and our limbic system is there for a reason. It's to protect us so that we can survive, right? So the brain is negatively biased. It has all of these bells and whistles going off, threats in the environment. Well, stress is the mechanism that the brain uses to alert us to a threat in our environment. Now, when you're in a negative mental outlook, you're constantly under chronic stress. And that's a bad thing. Chronic stress is a bad thing. See, minor stress, temporary stress, which is what is supposed to happen, is a good thing. It allows you to deal with the threat and then move on. But when you have a negative mental outlook, you're under chronic stress. You're constantly looking at things negatively, and things are bothering you every day, and it narrows your focus. And why is that important? Because you never see solutions to your problems, because your focus isn't broad, because you have a negative mental outlook. This is why successful people, if you meet a successful person, there's almost a 95% chance that they're going to have a positive mental outlook, unless you catch them on a bad day, right? They're almost always, people say to me, not knowing the internal gossip that's going on inside my head between the good and the bad voices, they say you just are eternally happy. Every time, everyone who's around me, I just had a birthday party, and everyone came around, of course, they well wishes and all that stuff, and they said, you're the happiest person I know. I wasn't always. In 2011, I was not. I was a negative person. I was depressed and I was upset, mainly because I had embarked on writing books, and selling books is so difficult, and I was frustrated by the whole process, and I just became depressed and negative about it, and I realized, my gosh, I'm hurting myself. So I transformed my mindset from negative to positive, and in 2012 on, I haven't looked back. So this is why they say that about me, because I practice every day gratitude. I always say, I'm grateful that my car started. I'm grateful that I have enough money in the bank. I'm grateful I'm going on a golf outing this afternoon. I'm grateful that I can do that with friends and family. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for that. Every day I express gratitude. Why is it so important to express gratitude every day? Because it shifts your mindset from negative to positive. Instead of looking at scarcity, what you don't have, you shift to abundance. You shift to what you do have. And when you do that, you're always grateful then for what you do have. And life, it's really a funny thing. I'm not a big proponent of The Secret. A lot of people are. The law of attraction. I'm not. I just don't buy into it. You can't think your way to wealth. You have to. The law of attraction requires action. So you have to take action in order to become wealthy. But you have to have that positive mental outlook. So that part of the equation, The Secret got right. And so I've always looked at it. Well, I can't control. I can only control what I can control. I can't control outcomes, but what I can control is my actions, the input. So every day from 2012 on, all I did was promote myself to the media. I wrote articles every day. I pitched those articles to the media. Eventually the media, somebody in the media said yes. And it was like Niagara Fall event. After that, I've been, I'm sort of in the media nonstop, really until the pandemic hit. It kind of, put everybody on hold. But I have more media exposure than Tony Robbins does. I do.
That's awesome.
And it's not just in the United States, all over the world. But I don't have the major media exposure that Tony Robbins consistently gets. And that, that's one of the downsides. But you know what? I'm not dead yet. So
Here you
I'm going to
come.
continue. I'm going to continue and keep doing what I do and grind it out, because that's what success requires, that you grind it out every day. What makes it easier is habits. Habits take the grind out of the effort, right? So if you have a habit you forged, like reading to learn, that's a common habit among self-made millionaires that I found. They read 30 minutes or more a day. In most cases, it's like an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Mhm.
So they're reading to learn, and I do that. I can't not do it. It's automatic. If I didn't do it, I feel uncomfortable because I'm not engaging in a habit. So in the
Mhm.
beginning, though, when I was forcing myself to read 30 minutes or more a day, it was like pulling teeth for me. But I did it, and it became a habit. Now I can't not do it. Just like running every day, pretty much do that every day. If I don't do it, I feel as if part of me is missing. Something's wrong with me. So if I don't eat healthy, if I eat junk food, I feel like something's wrong with me.
Mhm.
These habits that I've forged, these rich habits, they've helped me double my income. They've helped me improve my health, and they've helped me increase my IQ. So I'm going to keep doing it until the day I die.
Okay. I have one, well, I actually have so many questions, but our final one. You're looking back at a period in your life where you had to make the biggest shift. What would you say to yourself if you could pop back there now?
Don't do it. It was a mistake. I had one of my clients ask me to become his CFO and help him manage $80 million. They wanted to disperse it in different uh, business opportunities, and I left a very thriving CPA firm to become, worth potentially 25, $30 million, as my client said is possible. And I regret that decision. I did it. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. It's hard for me not to be. It's hardwired into my DNA. My father was, my brother is, my uncle was. It's something we
Mm-hmm.
are. So
Mm-hmm.
I did it, and I made a mistake, and it set me back about 10 years. And so, it is what it is. We go through life, we make mistakes, we screw up. My failures, I wear like a crown on my head. I'm not embarrassed by them. That I was initially, of course. I'm a human being. Now I understand from my research that most, specifically entrepreneurs, uh, they're pushing the ball up the hill. Most of the time, they're failing and making mistakes. So I'm in good company.
Yeah, and that you are. All right, ladies and gentlemen, everybody that's watching, Tom's books, and he has a lot of them. Rich Habits, Poor Habits, you see on the screen here. He also has Rich Kids, a book called Rich Habits, which is an incredibly short, very powerful read, 80 pages, I think it is. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's got the 10 big things you can start doing right now to set yourself up with really good habits to help you become rich. Do you have any final words for our audience before we sign off?
Yeah, just if you're interested, I put all my research on my website. I'm not interested in making money off of this stuff, although I haven't made a lot of money off of it. I'm not really interested. I don't give a shit. I'm done. I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
don't
you can
care.
say it.
I don't care about the money. I care about my legacy. My legacy is more important to me than money. So you can go on richhabits.net. I have all my research on there. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles. I have some free ebooks if you're interested in them. And every day I post a new article on something. It's meant to be inspirational, but it's also tied to my research. Feel free to get what is free and valuable, and maybe help improve your life somehow.
Absolutely. Also, remember, we're going to be posting a link to his new course. He also has a dream setting course. There's so much. I'm going to be dropping a lot of links under there. Click them, experience them, and thank you so much for your time today, Tom.
It's an honor. Thank you for having me on. I'm honored that you did. Thank you.
Thank you.